This video is made possible by the lovely people over on my Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel or you want to get your hands on some awesome high quality STLs, then please visit patreon.com/Will at Heroic Studios.
Have you ever thought about how to make your very own Wild Force animal crystals? Well, today, I'm going to show you how. Welcome back to my channel, guys. I am Will at Heroic Studios, and for the last week, I have been figuring out and perfecting out a process to make Wild Force animal crystals that go with my crystal saber that I designed. Now, the process isn't as much 3D printing as it is using casting resin. So I'm going to go through all of my attempts, which are right here, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 7 of them, and I'm going to show you the do's and do nots. Now, if you want to see the final result, you got to wait to the end of the video because I got to say I've outdone myself. However, if you want to get an extended cut of this video to learn some advanced tips and tricks, techniques, and how to get your crystal smooth and glossy to the finishing touches so that your crystal saber looks great, you're going to have to go on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Will at Heroic Studios to get that extra bit of content. Of course, crystal saber as well as the figurine animals that you can print on your own are also available over on my Patreon. So if you want to go ahead and make these and have your very own crystal saber, go over there, subscribe. $8.50 a month gives you a full access to everything you see here. But for now, I'm going to show you what I did to get the animals and the crystals, some do's and do nots. Now, a couple of things to note here before we actually get started is that you want to get silicone molds that are clear, like this one. And the reason being is you want the UV lamp to transmit as much light as possible that it hits the resin all the way through, okay? So these things are as clear as I can find them, and I think it'll be fine in terms of getting the light transmitted to go through properly. So here is my Red Lion Wildzord. I think they're in gold. I'm not really sure if they're just in silver. Don't really know, but I'm going to do mine in gold. So now that I got my lion painted and ready to go, let's get started. Alright, so what we're using, I'm going to plug up my UV lamp. Of course, we want to make sure we put on our gloves. And for this demonstration, I'm going to be using this red ABS-like resin. Alright, so I got a silicone mat here, and of course, you're going to want some pliers. Take your silicone mold, and you want to go ahead and fill this up halfway with your resin. Shake it, and be super careful if you can. And now you're going to take your wild animal, you're going to clasp the tail with the pliers and try to keep it as straight as possible if you can. Doesn't really matter, it's a 360-degree sphere. Now with that done, all we're going to do and then slowly let it go and kind of let the resin cure there for a little while. Alright, now that that's halfway done, we're going to take the rest of our resin and we're going to fill up the rest. More of a rubber ball than it is a solid crystal, but I think that has to do with the resin not fully cured inside, so you might want to leave it out in the sun for an hour or so, kind of let it do its thing. So here I am in my backyard. These animal crystals, let me focus it a little bit, looks a lot better than what it was. I let it sit out in the sun a little bit and it kind of cured up the rest of that resin. Don't think you guys can really see like you used to, but the lion is there. He's in there. It's just there's still a lot of imperfections inside of the resin itself. that's causing a little bit of the imperfection to show. So I'm actually going to try casting resin, and I'm actually going to try another way where you're using UV resin to make it more streamlined. But it is definitely harder, and it does feel better than what I did before. So not bad. Also, I got to Dremel this off and smooth it out, and we'll see how it looks after that. So the UV resin worked kind of well. Not the best, but I think I can improve upon that method. The resin is so dark you can barely see the animal crystal inside, but when I sat it out in the sun penetrated the rest of it just fine. As you can see, there's some bubbles all around the edge, and so when I go at this next time, I'm not going to shake up the bottle. I'm actually going to pour it very carefully. So, I mean, for the most part, the animal is in there, and it is a solid piece of rock, but we're going to try something else to kind of get this moving along. So next we're going to be using epoxy resin, and this is a 1-to-1 ratio. We're going to use this mold, same process as we did before. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, we don't have any colored resin, okay? Most of these come in clear, and it's actually really good clear. So I went ahead and also got this pack of color pigment stuff, and it comes with a ton of like different colors that we can go ahead and make. So the best news about using epoxy resin is that you can change the colors and make these whatever colors you want, which Wild Forest crystals is going to be a lot. So I want to kind of make it a less dense red, like less denser than this, and see what we can do with the epoxy resin. So I went ahead and printed another line. I'm going to be getting painted up, getting them nice and gold, and then we're going to start the process of making this actually work with the epoxy resin. All right, cool. This little guy, I used ABS resin for him. Kind of broke his tail off during the removal of the support. So I'm going to hit him with some primer, and then I'm going to hit him with some gold, and then we're going to try the process again. So while we wait for the lion to go ahead and kind of dry with the primer, we're actually going to sit here and we're going to start. Understand that it has a 40-minute work time. Now this is going to be tricky timing when the line is going to be inserted into the resin, because keep in mind and also remember that once this stuff is mixed together with the hardener, this stuff is going to begin to actually harden. So there's a couple ways that I want to do this in terms of how I want to get the line inside of the sphere before it actually starts to harden. Now there's two ways we can do what we did before: halfway, put the line in, and then put the rest of the resin in there if you want to go that route. Or we can fill it up to the brim and then put the line in there. So I'm not going to be mixing the hardener or anything like that just yet. I actually want to go ahead and get the coloring right, because we don't want any air bubbles. And now we're just going to make the red. I did 5 drops of that. That looks more like a pink, so. Which is this stuff. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, so we need to fill this up with just about the same amount. We're going to put the red in the sphere. Then we're going to put the hardener in the sphere. We're going to mix it up with the stick, and then we are actually going to insert the line into the resin mold. And this should be enough to actually keep this from the line from moving, because this stuff looks really thick. I don't think there's going to be an issue keeping the line set. But now we're just going to take our line and we're just going to insert them in there. So it might be a little opaque right now, but this is supposed to be a little bit more clear, so it might clear up as the hardening process begins. So again, I'm just experimenting here. Don't really know what's the best way to do this. First time doing it, so we are going to see how this works. And I think I'm not going to add anymore. I think it's fine. So now we just wait for the hardening process to kind of start its thing. And so see you in about a day. Okay, so my last attempt ended up not working. I don't have it. I tossed it away because it was trash. So while I was trying to figure out how to get the line suspended in the resin sphere, this little guy right here, I actually figured out a way to do it properly. It's a little bit more of a process, but I believe that this process is going to be a bit more effective than the last step we've done. All right, so make sure you got your gloves on. Now I'm going to mix in the hardener, and I'm actually going to start the process of the hardening because you want to be able to do this while it's hardening. And I'm actually going to mix in the pigment changer, the red here. So that's our hardener, that's our resin. All right, so I'm going to start with that and get it mixed up. Okay, so now we're going to pour our resin inside of our mold. The idea is to have it hard enough to where the line doesn't sink into it, but actually sort of kind of stands on the surface and sinks a little bit. And in order for that to happen, you kind of need this to start hardening and becoming a solid mass, okay? Oh man, this is really in there. That looks pretty good. The line did sink in a little bit. I'm gonna get this right. I promise you I will. But I think at this point you kind of get the idea of what it is you need to do. So, and do some finishing touches on this thing, which I'll show you how to do once I let this sit out for a little while longer. My God, what attempt is this? Number 6. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 crystals here, including this one that was UV resin. We have 4 that didn't make it, so I threw that away because it was all gooey and nasty. So we're on our 4th attempt, but I'm actually going to go ahead and do an eagle to kind of change up the color of the resin that we got going on here. So, what I did was that I scaled up the animals, and I have them at about 45 millimeters in height. So it should fit inside of it. The eagle might be a little tricky because, well, the wings and stuff. But I think once you get it in there, because of the size that I have it, if it does decide to sink, it'll still be in the middle somewhat. So in millimeters, the size of 2 inches is about 50.8 millimeters. I have about, at most, 45 millimeters in the Y direction. So when you go ahead and put your animal in there face up, if it decides it wants to sink, it won't sink too much. You got about a good 5 millimeter tolerance. So you can't really gauge 2.5 millimeters on either side. So if it sinks, the illusion that it is in the middle will be there. So we're going to go ahead and start the next one. My eagle is done, as you can see here, ready to go in. And as you might notice, the wingspan is actually bigger. I don't know if my audio is carrying over or not, but I guess I have to find out when I edit. Anyways, here's the eagle. This looks really good. If you notice, there are bubbles inside of the sphere. Kind of a bummer, but that's probably the result of putting the animal inside of the sphere when it was still kind of gel and causing air bubbles to kind of manifest. And what it's supposed to do, if it's still a little bit more liquid, is the bubbles are supposed to rise up to the surface and kind of start to kind of pop. But we didn't get that here, so that's okay. I'm still happy with the process. I'm happy that I was able to get the eagle in there the way I did. So let's work out the kinks on our bubbling situation here. So battery just died on my scale. Be right back. All right, new batteries, done. Let's put our contraption on here and let's turn it on. So we want to do milliliters here because that's what this is measured by volume, not by weight. I was using 15 before, so we're going to do 15 again. And you want to pour slowly, as slowly as possible. All right, slow it up. There we go. Mixing our dye in. Now I'm doing a line again. Line will probably be okay for now. Stirring stick is just trying to get it all the way around stirring, because you are going to have some bubbles coming up. You can kind of hear them popping. And you want to do it slowly. Okay? Scraping the bottom, scraping the sides, around. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to wait about half an hour, and we're going to allow the bubbles here to rise and pop to the surface. Now that's one way to do it. It does take a little bit of time though. It's been about half an hour, and as you can see, this looks really clear. There's a few more bubbles that are in there. So what we're going to do is actually going to start getting our mold together, and what we're going to do to kind of mitigate any kind of bubbles is we're going to do our best to kind of pour it in from the side. Now the reason why I'm going to do this first before trying to mitigate any more bubbles is because we might get more bubbles when we pour it in. And that's not what we want, obviously. We want this to be as clear as possible. So I'm going to angle our cup, get a little spigot there, and it kind of just slide down in place. So I'm looking inside of my resin, and I do see some bubbles. So what we're going to do is we're going to get well, we can do one of two things. Thing number one is what we did with the cup. Let it sit and let the bubbles kind of pop out themselves, which is what I've done before. And this is what I got. The only problem with this is that the line isn't in place. So this is probably the best way to get your bubbles to kind of come up to the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm not actually going to touch it. I'm just going to let it sit because it needs to harden anyway. And what we're going to do is let it sit, let it do its thing. And then we're going to come back and mix the second batch and let that work. Now the second batch is a bit, I won't say a bit more complicated, but that's where we got the bubbles coming up to the surface here and popping. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible when it comes down to it. So we're gonna let this sit, let it harden, and keep an eye on the bubbles. Here's a quick tip to kind of measure your working time. Now with this particular bottle of resin, the working time is about 40 and 50 minutes, so a little over just before an hour. Now if you kept the cup in which you mixed your resin in, you can kind of start to see it kind of gelling. And that's going to correspond to what's in your mold. So if you want to go ahead and start adding your animals now, you can do that. But keep in mind, this is still, right now as it is, still pretty like liquidy. You want it to kind of get a little bit harder, but not too hard to where when you insert your animal, you're causing air bubbles to pop up. That's not what we want, because it's going to be very hard for those air bubbles to escape. And we're just going to let this sit like we did before, allowing the bubbles to rise up and keeping an eye on our line. So good sign, the lion, you can still kind of see the tail of the lion kind of facing upward where it's been positioned. So that is a good sign that we are good. And another good thing is that you can, or you probably can't see it through the camera, I can see directly down into the vat. So it looks very clear, looks really good. I might add some more. Now, we are getting close. Here's the line that I just did before. It is clear. Look how clear that is. Now, we do have to do a little work in the back here to kind of round that out, but that's easy. Compared to the eagle here, now I'm not sure exactly what caused this to get all super foggy, but the lion here is like clear as day. Look at, there's a few bubbles in there, and that's the result of us kind of maneuvering them around and trying to get them to stay put, and that caused a lot of air bubbles that couldn't escape while the mixture was hardening. But I have finally devised a way to suspend your animal in the center of the sphere. And with that being said, I hope you guys really do appreciate the length that I have gone to figure this out, because I can't make an animal crystal without the animals that go inside of them. I can't make a crystal saber and have no animal spheres. That's a half-ass job. You guys know I'm at half-ass. We're gonna do this right. So I have devised a plan to suspend your animal right inside the resin mold, and we're actually gonna be working with Sharky here. It's all nice and painted and ready to go with some blue resin. Now I gotta say that this method has actually been right under my nose all this time, but between getting ready for shows, managing my shop, giving you guys something to look forward to this month, it has been a very hectic month, not to mention my family is sick, so it's been a lot. So I haven't really been thinking straight, but here is the simple truth. The way you suspend your animal is using some everyday household products that you probably have lying around. With that being said, I introduced to you the hair clip, and I introduced to you the, I want to say shade clip. I don't know, got it at Lowe's, okay? This is what you are going to do. You are simply going to attach your animal via tail, or however you want to do it, okay? Make sure that he's, kind of straight. You're going to insert your animal into the mold, and you're simply just going to clamp it. Now the clamp here, make sure you're getting it on your hair clip. That way you're holding your animal suspended in the resin. You see how simple that is? Do you see how easy that was? We have gone through how many attempts? 7 at this point, and we have just now cracked the code on how to actually suspend your animal inside of the sphere. Now, of course, this is going to vary. This used to be a clear sphere. Not really sure what happened, but if you have any new clear spheres, you can kind of see where that animal is with respects to the resin. So if the resin is halfway, obviously you want to try and position your animal to where it is halfway in there, depending on how you have your resin and where your levels are. But this, my friends, this is going to be the day that we have finally figured out how to suspend our animal crystals in resin. You can kind of sort of see that. I want them right about there. And then we're just going to clip them in place. All right, moment is true. We're going to remove our clips, and we're going to see if our little Sharky here is actually staying in place. And it looks like he is staying put. Oh, I think we might have cracked the code here, guys. It's been about, I don't know, almost 12 hours, so here comes the exciting part. There we go. There we go. The shark kind of looks too front forward, but the method works. The method looks great. So we're gonna do this for the rest of them. I think the shark might be a little big though, thinking about it. He's kind of up there and refracting in there, but there you go. Sharky. Perfect. Molds, but if you decide you want to go ahead and pick up these half molds here, then we're going to have to measure the volume of your bottom portion. So I'm going to place this on my scale. I'm going to turn it on. And what you kind of want to do before you start measuring out resin is to simply take some water, fill it up, and kind of see what the milliliters, the volume of this is. So it's about 22 milliliters. I'm gonna get it up a little bit more. I'm gonna say 23 milliliters, 24. Let's go 24. So that'll be 12 and 12, a perfect even half. Now, I don't want to go ahead and get to the rim here. I want to kind of leave it to where we're not surpassing that rim, because when we put the cap on and we want to add the rest of the resin, we don't want this to sort of kind of already overflow. We want to do our best to kind of prevent that. So we have 24 milliliters here. I'm just going to go ahead and pour this back in my squirt bottle if I can. Make sure you do dry it out. The animal crystals, if you look, some of them have a very light hue color to them. Some of them have a heavy color. I want to go with more of a light color. So what I've been doing, I've been taking my stick here and just kind of dabbing a little bit on there. Not a lot. Not like that much, because this stuff is really potent. Just dip it in there and start stirring. Now, there's a lot of bubbles in here. You don't want to pour it with the bubbles in here. If you look at the red is pretty much clear as a whistle. Now, you're probably going to get more bubbles when you pour in your mold. That's okay. As long as you insert the animal as you're doing it, you should be a-okay. Now, before I pour in the red lion, I'm going to show you my contraption that I've done for my eagle. Now, I have this old cup here that I use for the bison, and I'm actually going to put my base mold in there. Actually, that's a pretty good setup, okay? Now, with the eagle, we're using our pins here, and what we're simply going to do is I'm going to clip a pin onto the tail. Be careful, because these are super fragile, and these pins do give off a lot of force. Watch out for the feet. You can already see I broke one when the foot came off. And I'm going to be using, like, you can use a toothpick or something, whatever, and I'm just going to set it like that and have the eagle submerged in the resin mat. You probably can't see it, so let me adjust my camera really quick. You can see the eagle right there is sort of, suspended. So when we pour our resin in here, you want to make sure you have it centered as much as possible before you add anything to it. So get it in the middle, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pour straight like that into the bottom of the resin, and we're just going to leave it alone. Leave it alone for about 4 or 5 hours. Let the resin start to gel and do its thing. That way we don't have to mess with it. Now we're going to add the resin to our lion. This is a contraption that I have for the lion. Real easy. You just put them in there, and voila. Let's see how we did. So we're going to start off. I'm filling up our red line here. See how homeboy came out. See, nice and clear. It's somewhat centered. Let's look at our eagle. Now that Now that looks great. Got some cleanup to do along the edges here, but I think this looks fantastic. Look at that. Wow. I think we finally got it. Finally cracked the code here, guys. So, there you go. Let's talk about my red line here. We have perfected the process of getting this as clear as possible. Now, the line isn't centered. Big elephant in the room here. That's okay. The reason why that is the way it is and the eagle is actually centered is because of the molds that we've used. Now, if you remember from earlier in the video, this used to be clear. You could see right through this. But because of all the molding I've been doing, all the resin I've been putting in, it's actually become opaque. So trying to eyeball where to put the line in and kind of get it centered has been a challenge, and this is why it came out like that. So if you can, go ahead and try and keep your molds going to be as clear as possible, because you will get a much better positioning of your red line. As for the eagle, which is actually pretty good and center looking, these half molds are pretty good. It doesn't matter how opaque these get. You can put the half one down and suspend your animal quite simply, just like in the middle, and you can actually see it from the top how far it's actually going into the resin, which is great. So this might be a better alternative, none in which the post-processing is going to be easier. You still have to do a little bit of work here to get rid of this line and to kind of maybe fill this up a bit more with more resin to kind of get a little bit more of a notch here. But that is something that we can easily do. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys learned something cool to do. Not necessarily 3D printing, but a good additive process to make your props look more real. So with that being said, if you guys want to know how to get the notch off more efficiently, some more tips and tricks, other alternative methods to kind of finishing up your crystal, you're going to have to go over to my Patreon and become a member for $8.50 a month to get access to everything, all the files I do, and of course, more content in the videos just like this one. So quick shout out to all my patrons. You guys are awesome, and I do hope you do enjoy the extended cut of this video and making your animal crystal look super dope. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. You know, it's not hard, it's right there. Is my mic even on? Yeah, it's on. Cool. Just making sure I'm not talking to the air here. Okay, well, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, make something cool. Take care.